You're such an asshole.
AssholeConsulting.com. Helping everybody out. Okay. Manuel writes, "Hey Cap, your Mexican boy Manuel here. If you don't remember me, I'm the guy who's joining the military to gain citizen. By the way, not an illegal alien. Even though I think I'm fluent enough with my English, I've often found myself lacking the ability to articulate my sentences in a clever manner. Many times I think of clever stuff that even though is witty and funny and suits the situation, especially I'm not able to express with words." All right, that is not doubting that. But before we go further, you seem to write pretty well. You seem to have a pretty darn good command of the English language. There could be another thing. It could be that you're just young and you're hanging out with dumb people. Not that your friends are dumb, but I'll give you another example. When I was teaching economics, I was 27. I was teaching essentially late teens and early 20-somethings. Roughly the same generation. I'm just a little bit older. And I said, well, that's because, it was economics class. I was like, well, we subsidize different industries or something. And then all of a sudden somebody had the courage at least to raise his hand or her hand and say, "Mr. Clare, what are these words you're using?" I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, what's subsidize? I'm like, subsidize? And not everyone, but like a lot of people like, yeah, I had no idea what you're talking about. Like, you don't know what subsidize means? Like, subsidy? And what it then dawned on me, and this was a very eye-opening moment for me, teaching those kids is realizing, oh, these are pretty stupid kids. And they were, because we were in a college that was one of those fly-by-night scam colleges that would have taken anybody, especially those who didn't have good grades and study in school. So so when you say you're trying to be clever, we could talk vocabulary all you want. And you could just grab a thesaurus or English to Spanish dictionary. I'd imagine there also has to be, because no language perfectly translates, so I'd imagine there's got to be like a Spanish-English thesaurus. Like, okay, here's the word I want to know in Spanish, but what are the English words that translate into it? Because you have the direct translation, that may not get the exact same effect or punch. Plus, you read through enough words, you're like, oh, yeah, that's what that word means. Okay, I see. And then you know the word to use, or at least a handful of words to use. So it could just be simple vocabulary, but when you're talking about cleverness, I was just kind of, and like you're not able to express it with words. If it's poorly received by your friends, or no one's laughing and they just don't get it, you may be talking over their heads. That's a possibility. Not saying it is, not saying you don't have to improve your vocabulary, but just keep in mind that's a possibility. Because if also you go talk with some old farts, and they're eloquent or older, they may get the joke. So that's just a possibility you should be aware of. I found that often I think of them in Spanish. This causes problems because most of the time I'm unable to translate them with the same punch and cleverness that I thought for them at first. Because of this, I started to search American culture, but quickly I found 80% of what's out there was bullshit leftist propaganda that will melt my brain in the case of consuming it. Then I remembered that you always talk about the great movies of the good old times when men were classy and women were beautiful, so I thought I'd ask you for a list. A list of movies, songs, and books that are a must that will help. I already read all your books, so don't worry about it. We're great there, with the goal of getting more attuned with good parts of the American culture. Anyway, thanks. Like a video response, but a bullet point as well. All right, so I had to sit and think about it. And just so you know, the vocabulary will be one thing, but what you're going to get out of these movies, I intend to agree with this, and even impressing girls, impressing friends, it's not even so much your vocabulary. It is your charm and how you carry yourself. Now, the problem is the old movies in the old days, nobody really carries themselves like that anymore, but that's good, because if you carry yourself, if you can pull off Cary Grant, it's a level of charm. So we're not just going for a vocabulary lesson, but we're going to go for charm. And so not all of these movies, like for example, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is not one I'd recommend. You watch it, great movie, but they use the word bivouac. And I'm like, what the hell is bivouac? So I had to look it up. It means to encamp outside of a fort or camp outside of something else. In Casablanca, you're going to find out that it's not so much the vocabulary. It's pretty universal vocabulary. There aren't going to be many words you haven't heard there. but it's the wit and cleverness in which they sewed it and make quick observations. And so you'll see a lot in the Forrest movies. But let's just go through the list that I have here. It's not a terribly long list, because one, I don't read a lot, and I try to come up with different genres of movies that would help. So first, reading. I would read The Economist. Today it's shit, but its writing is still good. And if you really don't want to read through leftist slop, it's biased to an NPR-like level, I would try and go get backorder issues, old issues from the 90s. A lot of my writing and my wit and cleverness with the language came from reading The Economist, and I read it from front to back. It comes out of Britain. We're going to talk about that later. But that really not only improved my ability to read and write, or not read, but write and speak, but also be more clever and witty and just have a cadence. Like when I talk, you could tell people when they're, if they're just talking or they're shy, they say things and that's it. They just convey information. When I talk, another thing to kind of watch is the actor. He plays Mr. Alizante in Last Man Standing. You could tell he's theatrical because he talks like, Bobby, and he holds his breath, and I always tell my girlfriend it's like he's constipated, and then he all lets it out at the same time. Now, even that's a grotesque description of what happened. It's very charming the way the guy talks. Now, he's older, he's more refined, he's had this to develop. But Alonzo something. Hector Alonzo, is that him? Anyway, he was like, Bobby, perhaps maybe you're thinking of things the wrong way. And what was said there is, yes, Bobby, you are thinking things the wrong way, but the pause, the inflection, the tone, which is natural. I think if you took theater classes, that would probably help a little bit, but this can't be rushed. You got to practice it. Same thing when I taught dance class. Same thing when I'm on these videos. I don't do this intentionally. I'm sure there's some mannerisms that I have that you're like, oh, wow, he must... No, I'm consciously aware I'm doing it. But you'll see that in that actor. But The Economist is something that I could read, and then that did form how I wrote, inevitably how I thought, and then how I talked. All right. The other thing I read, Wall Street Journal. I'm not trying to increase your financial education here. I'm just telling you what's really good writing and really good reading. You'll learn a lot, but it's also very good writing. And so they're writing at like an IQ of 110, I'd say. So it's not just going to be conveyance of information. They're going to use interesting words. Like The Economist will use more colorful language. Wall Street Journal, maybe not as much, but it's still very good writing, very good cadence, very good sentence and organizational structure. And that'll help out. Then there's a guy called Joe Souchere. He writes for the Pioneer Press. You like reading him because he's conservative. He has a radio show, too, that I like listening to. But his writing is very good. He's a very aged, I don't mean in an old sense, but he's like a Scotch. Well, he's old, but he's aged to writing perfection. He writes very well. And again, the cadence, the organization, the slight hint of poetry behind it. That is what I would read Joe Souchere for. And then for reading, yeah, I mean, I got books, but dude, I read so few books, and the majority of the books I read were for work or school. And I just don't like reading. I really don't like reading. I like The High King. I like Lloyd Alexander, but those are books for kids. And I read it when I was a kid, so I'm sure the language level is down here. All right, next idea that I had, I was coming up with different movies, but it dawned on me, going back to the cleverness and the wit, there's certainly going to be some vocabulary, but if you want delivery, you want a slight bit of poetry, British movies, or British BBC, not documentaries, but the Blackadder comedy troupe from the World War II one. He has multiple series out. But watching the British, they created the fucking language, you know? They're English. But they, especially when they're performing, these are actors, these are people who've been in theater for a long time, and they just deliver better than I could. I mean, they're just so fucking British. Like, oh yes, well, hook dang winkly and diggly dently. Oh, and then I'm like, fuck, I can't. I'm not that smooth. It's if anything, it's kind of fun watching somebody from Britain impersonating America. Well, you all kind of go, you know, we're the old Southern drawls hick who, you know, who's not refined and polished. So I would go and watch the any kind of, no, not any, but your famous British movies. Now, I got a couple here, a couple British productions. The Great Escape, you got to watch that. Bridge Over the River Kwai. The Blackadder Comedy Troupe, the World War II series. He did a bunch of different themes throughout history. They're all funny, but the World War I. The World War I one is the funniest. Sherlock, both ones with Benedict Cumberbatch, and the American productions with Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr., who are not British, but they do the perfect job of just acting so much smarter and polished and refined. Like, they just deliver that like, wow, look at that. That's charming. That is charming. And then Father Ted, which is a British production. Black Books. And I would not go with IT Crowd. That's just, it's funny, but it's not really polished as much there. Then we have American movies or American productions, where it's going to be a different ball of wax, but you can still figure it out and learn and pick up some things. Books, if you want books to read, you can read books by Mickey Spillane, but I would go and watch the movies they made, which brings us into this realm of the 1940s type of movies. Wow, see, yeah, a little quick up pants and a little pickup sticks. Yeah, I mean, and you watch these movies. Oh, I got another one. Hang on. Oh, what was it? It was Jack Webb. These detective shows. She walked in. I had 2 shots of me. 2 of Jack Daniels, 1 of Let. You know, that kind of funny. So, but it's quick and it's scripted. So it is choreographed. The people don't talk like that. They're not that smooth. But watching it in a purified form will kind of condition your brain. Oh, I should aim for that. Be a little bit funny. But I'll look it up here after I'm done going through this list. But it's a perfect example. You wouldn't want to sound like this, but it's the wit and the speed and the cleverness that kind of was a hallmark of the 1940s gumshoe detective type of movies. That you're like, oh, I want to be that quick. I want to be that witty. Not all the time. Nobody can be, but that's how you want. So, anything Mickey Spillane. Frank Miller, reading the comic books or watching movies, even though he's younger, he wasn't from the 40s, but it's kind of the same. You ever watch had Bruce Willis in it. It's one of my favorite movies. Sin City. That's a great one. Watch that one. That's just a great one. These are going to be great movies, by the way, too. Then there's Cary Grant and Humphrey Bogart. It's not the detective gumshoe movies, but they're funny in their delivery and smoothness and performance. So, was it His Girl Friday, Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, Charade, Casablanca is an absolute must that you have to do. But any one of those 50s, 60s type of movies would be good with Cary Grant. Humphrey Bogart died a little bit, but then they always had like Rock Hudson and what was it, Come September. These are all cute, fun movies. Don't get me wrong, but I like that. Vincent Price is another guy, an American that you can watch shows or movies, only because he was a character. But then what was the other one? John Wayne movies, and it has to be John Wayne, because he's witty. He'll say some sage wisdom that is very charming and clever. What was that? I just had the idea. His Girl Friday. Oh, James Bond movies. Watch Sean Connery. Even Roger Moore. But, and again, it's scripted, but these are British gentlemen, and they're all Britishy, and yes, and then, some clever witticism or another, and the girl is banging them. I would kind of watch your James Bond films. Connery, Lazenby, Roger Miller. Not to say the future ones weren't as good, but you don't beat Sean Connery and you don't beat Roger Miller. They're different Bonds with different flavors of cleverness and wit. But again, you could pick out some mannerisms, tone, words, lines, stuff that'll help you. And then finally, let me look this up. There's a Jack Webb radio show. It wasn't Dragnet. Old Time Radio. Pat Novak. Pat Novak for Hire. Yep, Pat Novak for Hire. Download. You can find that, I think, for free. My buddy sent me a link. But that's another thing that you can listen to with just headphones. And that would definitely go a long way. That would. You know what? I hate to say it, but Stefan Molyneux, because he's got that damn accent again, but he's also obvious a very good speaker. But that's another, like, if you don't want to sit down and watch a movie, you're looking for more podcasts, something you can download. Pat Novak for Hire, Stefan Molyneux. There's a guy down in South Africa. Not that they all have to be British. They just got that it. What was that guy? I forgot. But that's a pretty good starting point for now. So I'll email you this list, and hopefully it'll work. It'll be fun. You're not going to not enjoy any of these things. They're very entertaining. Some of these are absolute must watches for any man. They're really good. But yeah, that'll be a good starting point. But a lot of it also, it's just going to be you getting older. I wasn't this wonderful, charming as fuck individual I am now when I was younger. I was less so. So, all right. You guys got questions, go to AnselConsulting.com. Download the Clary podcast. Not as smooth sounding as Jack Webb or Stefan Molyneux or Sherlock Holmes, but it is curseful and funny. So, all right, we'll see you kids later. Toodles.